Welcome to the Geek Podcast, where you can't keep Nintendo down. I'm Void. I'm here with my co-host Beej.
Nobody puts Nintendo in a corner.
No, nobody. Today, we're talking about Nintendo because the Nintendo Switch has just been killing it. It is having such a good year, and I don't think we could let this go by without discussing it.
No, like this year is honestly overwhelming on how good it is for Switch that I don't think I'm going to get to play all of the games that I want to play because there are still games back from January that I've wanted to get through that I haven't been able to yet.
Well, and like one of the things that made me think about this is that the other day I turned on my PS4 and it had to like rebuild its whatever because I had a power outage. And I had to think back to when we actually had that power outage, and I was like, oh, that was like 3.5 months ago. So I hadn't turned on the PlayStation 4 in that long. And so I started thinking about when was the last time I played a game on the PlayStation 4? And I don't think I've actually played a game outside of just like sampling something here or there, right? I don't think I've legitimately played a game on the PlayStation 4 since before we moved. So it's been 7 months at this point, something like that.
Wow.
And it's just crazy that the only things I've been playing are Switch and PC, and then like this stuff that I mess around with on phone, but that's not really like, you know, core gaming. And it's just weird to me that like I went most of this year, like more than half a year, without really doing a whole lot on the PS4. And part of this is because PlayStation and Xbox are in a slow year. It's a down year for them because behind the scenes they're ramping up for PS5 and for the Xbox 2 or whatever they're going to call it. But because of that, it has given Nintendo this huge runway to just get out ahead of them this year, and they're taking full advantage of it.
They are taking better advantage of it than I ever dreamed possible with the Switch Lite, with them doing I don't even want to say a refurb of the console, but they're doing or not even a revamp of it. It's just a new console. They're going to hit a different price point in a different market. They've got all of these games coming out. Oh my God, the games this year. They've just put so much stuff into 2019, and I love it because it's my go-to platform. Like, I don't really play games on anything else, primarily because of the convenience. Like, we have one TV and we use our PS4 for the media. Like, we just don't have a Roku or anything like that just because the PS4 is there. And so when I want to play a game and Jennifer's watching something on TV, I'll play on the 3DS or the Switch, and most of the time it's the Switch. And there's so many games coming out for it constantly, both remakes, remasters, indie games, and the AAA titles, that it pretty much has everything that I want. The biggest thing I have right now is deciding on whether I want to buy something digital or physical, and it's been more physical lately, so I can lend to my friend and nephew, and he's getting a Switch Lite this coming well, I guess it's this month, actually. By the time he might have it by the time we finish this episode goes live, if it's out yet, because I don't remember when this one's going live. But I'm gonna have to lend him games for the Switch. I mean,
I'm doing the same thing. Like, I got to start thinking about which games do I want to pick up as physical games, because my kids went and they bought themselves a Switch because they saved the money for it. So I'm going to start doing that basically with this holiday season of video games, or this fall in general. And there's so many games, like you said, like you can't keep up with all of them, but also I find myself purposefully dragging my feet on like PlayStation games, Xbox games, PC games, if I think they would be a better fit on the Switch, and I suspect that they're going to come there. Like, there are some games that it's obvious they're never coming to Switch, it's just not made for the hardware, and that's fine. But if it's a game that I think might end up on Switch, I kind of will go out of my way to just, let me just wait a little bit. Let me just see what happens. Maybe it'll come on Switch later.
Which is insane because of how you play games, because of how much you want to be involved in that initial conversation, that waiting on something like that seems almost counterintuitive and antithetical to the way that you generally act. But I do the same thing, that I won't play something like, I'll see sales for these games that I've been wanting to play forever on either PS4 or PC on Steam, and I'm just like, it's probably going to be on Switch by the end of the year, or maybe by June of next year. I'm going to wait on it. That's what I did with Dragon Quest XI. I got 22 hours into it, loved the game, like hardcore loved the game, realized there was going to be a Switch release and waited well over a year to play it, and it comes out later this month. And I'm A-okay with that because I am so excited for the game to be on Switch. And that has never happened with another console before.
Yeah, I mean, I gave Dragon Quest another shot this last week because you've been talking it up so much, Dragon Quest 11, and it's because it was on Switch. Like, I had tried it on PS4 right when it came out, and I was like, not really. But I realized that, like, okay, well, if it was an RPG and it fit maybe like somewhere else in my life where I didn't have to watch it on the TV, maybe it would be good on Switch. So I tried it for a few hours. I did determine it's not for me for a variety of reasons, one of which was the music. Surprisingly, I know I texted you about this, but like the music in that game doesn't quite seem to fit. Like it just feels old and repetitive, and that's because it is. Because that game just doesn't iterate as quickly as I want my games to. It doesn't do a whole lot that's new. But I also see why you like it. I see what's there for other people to like, and I could see why it's such a better fit for the Switch in general than it would be for a PlayStation or an Xbox.
And I mean, it works great on those systems. Like, I played it on Steam and I love it on there. And I mean, obviously it did super well on those consoles because for what it is, I mean, I knew you were not going to like Dragon Quest 11. Like, you're literally the only person I've ever heard complain about Dragon Quest music. Because it's one of the big draws to the series is the way that they do the music. And it's like, I knew that when you said that, I was like, oh, you're going to hate this. Like, you're not going to like this at all. Especially when they've redone all of the music for 11S that they've done. They did it all orchestral this time instead of MIDI based. And, but I knew it wasn't going to be for you, but it is better on the Switch. And better than playing on Steam by far, just because it's there on this console with the ability to sleep it, the ability to not have to worry about hitting a church or a goddess statue to be able to save. And it's just the Switch as a whole is where I hope gaming goes because of stuff like that. That's why I play almost all handheld games at this point.
Well, and like, not even to mention the Nintendo Direct that was just the other week. I think it'll probably be about 2 weeks ago when this episode actually airs. We're recording a lot this month out of sync with real time. But I think it was a couple of weeks ago. So in our time, it was only a few days ago. But basically, there were a ton of new game announcements. A lot of them are launching between now and the end of the year, which was surprising. Like, we are not seeing that from PlayStation and Xbox. I think that we basically know all the games that are coming out for those systems. We're not really going to be surprised, right? Nintendo just came out of the gate and they said, here's a ton of games. Most of them are coming out between now and end of the year. And if not, they're coming out in like Q1 of next year. So everything is basically within the next 6 months that they announced. And a lot of them are like remasters of old games or games that don't exist on any other systems. And then there's stuff like Super Kirby Clash, which came out immediately after that Nintendo Direct. And I played a ton of it in the last couple days. Like, I played with my family over the weekend. It is basically Kirby by way of Monster Hunter. It's really interesting. Like, the controls, there's not a whole lot that any individual class or character can do. But if you learn like the core of the combat or the abilities for your character, then it's all about taking that in a group of 3 other people and then going and trying to defeat these Kirby bosses and learning their attack patterns and stuff like that. It was giving me really strange Monster Hunter vibes, but I like that game a lot. It's like a surprisingly fun local co-op. We played with 4 people all sitting on a couch and it was amazing. But it's just cool that they're doing games like that and releasing them without doing any ramp up or any like marketing ahead of time. It's just, here's a new game. It's out right now. Go try it out. It's free.
Yeah, and that's been my favorite thing about Nintendo Directs and the Switch is because they want to surprise you. And it's not that they want to like blow your mind or anything. They want to surprise you with something that's fun. And that's what they did with Tetris 99. That's what they've done with Super Kirby Clash. And I haven't been able to play it. I don't have room on my SD card, and I haven't wanted to delete anything. But it looks like it's amazingly fun for what it is. And I like the same thing with the Super Nintendo games. Like, I had no idea that the Super Nintendo games were coming out on Switch, much less coming out the next day. And immediately I got excited because of them announcing this was something that I've been wanting. And it's not even that big a deal. It's just, I can do this now. that these exist and I can play this and I can have fun. And that's why I look so forward to the Nintendo Directs over press conferences from Sony or whatever, where they're just kind of marketing materials. It just feels like they're doing that kind of large scale press release, kind of press conference. And Nintendo gets on there and is like, hey, you want to play a game? Here, play it right now. Have fun, kids. And it's like, oh, of course I want to have fun right now. That's why I love the Switch right now.
Well, and it makes the Sony and Xbox approach seem so antiquated because they will take 10 minutes to announce like one game, right? And they'll do a big lead up to it that nobody cares about. And they'll have developers awkwardly come out and talk. And then maybe some people will clap because they feel bad for them. And then they'll finally get around to doing an announcement. Like this is the structure, right? That they do.
It is. And the awkward clapping is there. Like it was, I think it was the, during the Crystal Dynamics Avengers one, that was just awkward because they kept waiting for applause and nobody did.
And
it was
in
sad.
10 minutes, Nintendo will have announced like 5 new games, or they'll have done like a 3-minute video on an indie showcase that will do like 25 games in that 3 minutes alone, you know?
Yep.
Or they'll do a deep dive on, hey, here's a bunch of like Super Nintendo games coming out, and then here's also Kirby, and it's only been 7 minutes. Like it's so much faster, and it's just getting information directly to us. I mean, that's why it's called what it is, right? And it's super effective because of that. I mean, these Super Nintendo games, I went out and I immediately downloaded it too. The next day, I sampled all of them. I gave every single one of them a shot, even if I had never heard of the game before, because why not? Like you said, it's like they want you to have games and like go have fun with it right now. It's who am I to say no? Of course I want to go do that.
And I learned that some of these games are amazing, and I never played them when I was a kid. Like Kirby's Dream Course is awesome. Did you get very far into it? Like I'd never played it when I was younger.
I did. So I beat that game when I was a kid. I have very strong memories of that game. It's way better than it has any right to be.
It is. That is exactly what I told Jennifer, like word for word, that this game is way better than it has any right to be. That I sat there, it may have been Saturday morning, we're sitting on the love seat like we do every morning, and she's playing Wordscapes on her phone, and I'm playing whatever it was on the Switch, going through the Super Nintendo, and I was like, I'm going to try this. I never tried it when I was a kid, and holy cow if it's not good. That I just sat there and played Kirby's Dream Course for way longer, and like I keep going back to it. Like it's so good, and I never would have played this game if it hadn't been on the Switch.
Yeah,
like
Kirby
I would
is
have.
the
I
golfer,
remembered it,
but also the ball, but also has superpowers. Like it doesn't feel like it should work, but for some reason it works really, really well.
It does. No reason. Like it's a very odd game that I'm glad that I missed when I was a kid because it brought me joy now. And like you played Mario Kart, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
you tried all of them.
I tried literally every game that was in there. Yep.
Okay, so I tried most of them. There are a few that I haven't tried yet, like Earth Defense Force or something like that. I haven't tried it and a couple others.
Those were the ones I went for first because I know Nintendo games so well that it was like I know exactly what to expect with like Super Mario World and Mario Kart, and those games are classic. They're always going to be classic. Nintendo's going to keep releasing them on every system. It's good that they're there, but I'm not super excited by it. I was more interested in the like I've never heard of this beat 'em up, or I've never heard of this like side-scrolling like shoot 'em up game. Like let me try them and see how bad they are because they're probably horrible, and they were, but it was interesting to play at least.
But it was bad in a good way that you now know it's bad. It's like okay, I'm good with that. Where like Mario Kart to me is just Mario Kart. It's not great. I don't really like the first one that much, and I never have, but I'm glad that it's there, and I'm glad that Jennifer and I are going to be able to play split screen on the original Mario Kart together. And she's going to hate it. She's going to hate it so much, but it's going to be fun because neither of us are going to like it, and so we're going to be laughing a lot while we play it. It's like Stunt Race FX was one of those games I wanted to play when I was a kid, and like it was like a $90 cartridge because it had that FX chip in it. Like it was super hyped up. It is so bad. It is so incredibly, terribly bad that they put it on here, and it's like, man, that should have stayed in the 90s. Like, what did you think about it? Do you think it was as bad as I do?
Yeah, it was horrible, especially if you go to 2-player and the frame rate gets cut into like a quarter of what it is as a single player. It's brutal.
Ooh, I didn't even think about two-player.
Yeah, my
I
brother
didn't
and I
even
did
try.
that. My brain wasn't even registering it as like motion, like video. It was like a series of still images. Like the frame rate was horrible.
And it was terrible when it was one player,
That's
so
what
the
I
frame
thought.
rate was
And then I tried two-player.
awful.
But it's fun that they're giving us access to these games, and they did it alongside really good games. Is the other thing, right? Like you have your Super Mario World in there, you have Yoshi's Island, you have like Mario Kart. There are classics in there that, in general, people love or loved at the time. And those are right alongside some of these that are just like a nostalgia trip, like throw us back to the 90s and see what games used to be like. And we thought they were good at the time. And now in hindsight, it's like, ooh, that did not hold up. But it's fun that they've given us access to that.
And it's fun to see the games that actually do hold up. Like Pilot Wings, I played so much Pilot Wings when I was a kid. That was one of my favorite Super Nintendo games. So I immediately booted it up. I think it was the second one I booted up, actually, Mario Kart being the first. And because I wanted to show Jennifer what the original Mario Kart looked like. I couldn't remember if she had ever actually seen it because she loves Mario Kart so much. But I opened up Pilot Wings, and I still got mad and frustrated at landing that airplane, just like I did when I was like 12 years old. Like, I still can't land that airplane, by the way. I still didn't do it. Like, it's super hard for me, but I had so much fun because I know it's not a good game, but I love it. And then you have games like F-Zero that I love. Like, there's a Twitter guy named Metroid Mike. His Twitter handle's at Metroid Mike 64, and I have loved watching him play F-Zero through the 30-second videos that he posts about going through it, because he is so much better at F-Zero than I'll ever be. And it's so much more fun to play F-Zero for me now that I actually got out today my actual old Game Boy SP, my GBA SP, and I played F-Zero Maximum Velocity on it. The old cartridge of it on the SP, and the original is so much better. But it's just fun that these games have made me do that. And like Yoshi's Island is by far my favorite of anything that's on there right now. Like, I forgot how great it was and how much I love it. And like, it is so one of the best platformers ever made. Like, I immediately just fell in love with how beautiful it is and just how it controls. I just love it so much.
Yeah, it's such a solid game. And like I said, there's a handful of like really, really solid games in there they still hold up. And there are ones that hold up through the lens of nostalgia, like Star Fox. Like, I would never recommend playing Star Fox to anybody who hadn't played it. But if you played Star Fox as a kid, like, I don't know how much I went back and I played probably hours of that when the Super Nintendo stuff hit on the Switch the other day, because I have such strong nostalgia for it.
Yeah, and it's not as though it's even a bad game. It's still a good game and fun. It's just that it's not modern quality. I mean, I still have Star Fox in my Super Nintendo to my left right now. I'm looking at the cartridge in my Super Nintendo, where of course I'm gonna love that game. And because of the way they update the regular Nintendo, the NES classics on here, they're only going to be adding more on here. It's like, I want the Donkey Kong Country games on here so much. Like, I want to play through those on the Switch so much.
Yeah, I know those a lot of quintessential Super Nintendo games. Like, those would be perfect.
And they're waiting to put those on there, I know, just to have something to get people excited about when they go on there. I mean, you can't put all of the major ones that people want as soon as you drop it. The Final Fantasy games would be great on there. Mario RPG, I cannot wait till it gets on there because I don't have a Super Nintendo Classic. So I want to play that on my Switch. Like, I cannot wait for this. Like, I love remakes of games, don't get me wrong, but just having these basically being emulated, it's fun to see that they're still really good games.
That's a really good transition into the fact that like they're remaking games and remastering games to hit on the Switch too. You know,
yeah.
Like Final Fantasy, this might be the best system to play Final Fantasy games on now. For a long time, it was the Vita, but Vita's harder and harder to find now. It's not really supported anymore. All of these remakes and remasters of Final Fantasy games are coming out on Switch, and they have all these extra features like fast forward, rewind. You can do like cheats to like give yourself superpowers or go faster than like. They are improved versions of the games that we already loved. Final Fantasy VIII just came out like the other week on the system. And what we really need is we need some kind of collection or added into like the Super Nintendo games for some of the earlier Final Fantasy games. If that was on the system, then without a doubt, the Switch would be the best one for Final Fantasies.
They've also announced that there is an Asian version of Dragon Quest 1 to 3 that's coming out as a collection, Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3, and one for the Switch that was announced the same day as the Direct in the Japanese Direct. And it's got an English translation in there. They weren't announced for the North American one, but you can go and buy the collection of old Dragon Quest games, and it's going to play in English. It's going to be a $40 cart. And it's like, they need to do that for Final Fantasy. Like, this one was a complete surprise that they were doing it. So, I mean, the Switch is getting to be, like, the overall best system for RPGs in general. Before, I think it was, like, the Game Boy Advance and the DS were probably the best. Really, the DS, because you could play Game Boy Advance games on it for, like, the Final Fantasy games, like Golden Sun and all of that. Switch is probably better now overall because of the number of remasters that they're putting on it like this.
Well, and there's like improved modern games too, like Dragon Quest 11, like we talked about, which I'm sure you're psyched for it actually coming out, right?
I am so psyched for this game to come out, but it comes out on the 27th of September. I leave for Mexico for my annual company retreat on the afternoon of the 27th, so I leave my Switch at home so Jennifer can play it. So I'm not going to get to play 11 or the Dragon Quest classics until I get back at the end of the first week of October. So I've been waiting on it this long to be able to play it when it's released, and I don't get to play it. So I'm like, oh, but I'm stoked for it. It's one of the reasons I haven't pushed my way through the demo so far, is because I know it's just going to be even more of me having to wait.
Well, and, you know, like Fire Emblem Three Houses, like we've been talking about that every week or every 2 weeks. We did a whole episode on it because it's such a good game and it's a Nintendo exclusive. Like, you can't get it on any other system. That's probably outside of like playing Magic and, you know, the Arena specifically and like doing some phone games. The main thing I'm still playing is Fire Emblem Three Houses. Like, I'm decently far into my Blue Lines playthrough now. I haven't quite hit the time jump, but like, you know, I'm getting into the characters. Like, Dedu is a super interesting character, and I'm already learning a lot more about the Blue Line's perspective, even though I'm still before that time jump when
right.
Things really split off. But just seeing like the first set of missions through their eyes and seeing those characters react instead of the Black Eagles characters react, it's super fascinating. And
it was.
Yeah, and there's like these New Game Plus options that we talked about before, but now that I've actually been playing with it for a while, it's crazy how much like experience points and class progression is going so much faster the second time around. It's insane in a good way, in a really good way.
Yeah, it's so much nicer the second time around, and it really does feel like New Game Plus. Like, I wasn't sure if it would, but I'm glad that it does. And like, I haven't been playing it as much because, like I said, there were other things that were going on. But yeah, it's one of the games that I'm still like pushing for. Like, it's one of the main ones that I'm cycling between because it's so good. And it's honestly what I think of as a system seller. If you've played a Fire Emblem game before, and because I wouldn't buy a Switch for it, having not ever played a Fire Emblem, but now that I've played it, I can say that I'm so glad that I have a Switch for that. I'm glad that I didn't miss out on that because I hadn't played any others. Like, it's that good, and if I didn't have a Switch, there's no way I could do that. So in my mind, it's a system seller, and you should all go play Fire Emblem because I didn't like or know anything about Fire Emblem before this. Decided to give it a shot because so many people said it was great, and then fell into the series. Like, I've gone back and started playing Fates.
Well, and so before we wrap up the main topic, like, everything we've been talking about are games that are already on the system, but there are like all of the other games just looking forward between now and the end of the year. It seems like the things you and I are both excited for are Switch games. Almost entirely, right? There's a couple outliers on my list. There's some stuff I've talked about, like new sets in Magic the Gathering. But for the most part, like full new games that are coming out, they're like Switch games. Like, I'm psyched for Link's Awakening Remaster because it's one of the few Legend of Zelda games that I've never actually played through all the way. I've only played the first 20 minutes, probably like 50 times, but I've never actually beaten that game. There's Untitled Goose Game, which, I'm not playing as many indie games right now just because things are busy and I don't have time to like dive into them. That is a game that's been on my radar for a really long time. I'm going to play that game. I can't wait to play that game. It's so dumb, but it looks so fun. And Luigi's Mansion 3 is coming out. Like, Luigi's Mansion is one of my daughter's favorite games, so I'm really excited. I want to try it, and I'll play a little bit, but I'm more excited to, like, get it to her and see what she thinks of it and get all of her reactions and her, like, day by day, how's it going? Tell me about it. What's going on? And then Pokemon Sword and Shield. Like, I love a good Pokemon game, especially now that my kids are the age that they are, because they do too. So it's a game that all three of us can be playing kind of separately, and then we come together and talk about it. And I'm excited for that experience.
And I want to play Astral Chain. Like I had said before, last maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, I don't know. Time jumps are weird. And it's, but I talked about it where I wasn't in the mood to play an action game, but when I am, I'm looking really, really forward to playing Astral Chain. I just mentioned the Dragon Quest 1 to 3, there's Dragon Quest 11 S, and then I want to play the Final Fantasy remakes. I haven't gotten 7, 8, or 9 yet, so I'm really looking forward to getting to 8 because it just came out, and I just haven't bought it yet because of the same thing that you said. It's just like, there's not enough time to quite get to all of it, but there's so many games that are still coming out. Like, I can't wait for Luigi's Mansion 3 because I want to approach that as an adult playing it, because I was in college when the first one came out and I don't want to say I wasn't an adult because I was obviously an adult, but I didn't really have a fine appreciation for what that game was trying to do, and now I do, and I think that I'm really going to enjoy Luigi's Mansion 3.
Yeah, there's just so many games coming out. It's such a strong system, so we had to talk about it because it was on our mind, and I realized that it was taking up like a ton of both of our geekery from the new Super Nintendo games that came out, Nintendo Direct, and I said, let's just make this into a full topic because we have enough to say about it for sure.
And for all of you guys out there who don't have one, there are basically 3 models of Switch right now. There is the original Switch that I know Void and I have. There is the slightly upgraded model that is out right now, that just came out a few weeks ago or maybe a week ago, that has improved battery life, that I know GameStop has a thing where you can trade in your old Switch to get a new one for $75, but check the model numbers if you want the new one, if you're thinking about buying one. And then the Switch Lite, which is $199 and doesn't dock to a TV, and it's slightly smaller but has a slightly higher pixel density. So there are these 3 systems basically, and it's very, very accessible. And right now, if you have been on the fence of getting a Switch and the holiday season is coming up, with the Switch Lite coming out, there has really never been a better time to get on this. That if you're even remotely thinking about it, I would take a look at it for sure.
Yeah, it's a super, super solid console. Okay, before we get into our weekly geekery, and before we do Geeky Offer of the Week, actually, you guys can send us questions for our yearly mailbag episode. That usually comes out right around Thanksgiving sometimes, so you have some time to get questions in, but you don't have a ton of time to get questions in. We always try to give you a month or two. So here's your warning. Send questions our way on any of the ways you can reach us, including geek2geekcast@gmail.com. That's probably one of the easiest ones. Otherwise, Twitter or Slack or any of the other places. If you ping us and you add us or include us, we will grab that and we will throw it into the show doc so we can answer questions.
For sure. And this doesn't have to be gaming related. We've had people ask about personal lives, things like that. So if you just have a question that you've been wanting us to answer, just let us know. We always have a good time with that.
Yeah, so what do we have for our Geeky Offer of the Week?
We've got Patreon. Patreon is awesome. You can subscribe to us on Patreon at patreon.com/geek2geekcast. We have various rewards that you can have, Discord roles, awesome stuff like that. And eventually we're working it out to have exclusive content for Patreon subscribers. As we get closer to that, we will let you know more about that. But you will hear first about it probably on the Patreon, so check it out at patreon.com/geek2geekcast.
Yeah, and around the network this week, I have no idea because we are recording out of real time. But on the network, of course, we have Geekitude with Joe Hogan and Ray Vargas. It's often an interview show. It's always interesting to listen to. Tea Time with Katie and Chelsea, where they talk about whatever they want to talk about that week, just like BJ and I do. But it's with Katie and Chelsea, who are both fantastic people. Troidal is streaming on Thursday morning. Capsule J is streaming on Tuesdays from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern, and sometimes Thursdays and weekends. And then on the Geekery, we have Austin's Dragon Quest, where he blogs often about Dragon Quest, and 13th Story, that's often covering something geeky or video game related or adjacent to one of those two things, but always interesting to see what he's writing about.
Oh, and since we're recording out of time, Rob might have sometimes put up an episode, so you can check out the And Sometimes Rob feed and see if there's something new, because we don't know and neither do you. Woo-hoo.
Yeah. Exactly. And then, of course, if you want to get a digest of those articles to send to you, you guys can subscribe at geek2geekmedia.com/subscribe. With all that being said, time for Weekly Geekery, where we share what we've been geeking out about this week. What do you have this week?
I don't know if I have anything I didn't talk about last episode since we're recording out of time. Well, I did. I take that back. We rewatched Endgame. We finally got around to rewatching Endgame. And like you said last week, it is still, last time, I guess, when we talked about it, when you did it, it's still really, really good. That this movie, I'd kind of forgotten how good it was and how well made and put together it was. But just watching it, we didn't expect to watch all of it in one sitting, but we sat there and we were engaged that whole time. That even knowing what was going on, having seen it twice in the theater already, coming back and watching it at home still kept us sitting enraptured for the 3 hours, over 3 hours that it was. And I still get teary-eyed about Cap. Like, I just feel so much for Chris Evans and Cap that entire arc is just so good. And watching the bonus features, I learned that there has basically been one script writing team since Captain America, the first Avenger, all the way through Avengers Endgame. Like, there's only been two people writing most of those scripts, like Captain America, Winter Soldier, Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame, I think, were all written by the same two people, which really helps that continuity between all of them and really shows the arc between those main characters that were involved in those and why they've been so solid. So I really like the bonus features for Endgame as well.
Yeah, no, it's a super good movie. Like I said, when I rewatched it, I was like, oh yeah, this is great. Like, it's so impressive that they did what they were able to do.
Yeah, it really is. And oh yeah, this is great. Kind of like, I knew it was, and then you forget it and it's like, oh nope, love it.
Yeah. So for me this week, I've been watching a little bit of movies. I just haven't had a ton of time to do geeky stuff just because work has been so busy. But I snuck in Dark Phoenix, which whether that was a good use of my time or not is debatable, but I watched it. So the thing about it is Sophie Turner carries that movie. So she's Sansa from Game of Thrones. She's good. Like, she is good in the role that she has there. And
I know. Like, I'm so glad that they cast her as Jean, that, like, when I saw that, I was like, she's perfect. Like, she's great. She's going to be great. And I haven't seen Dark Phoenix, but I can only imagine that she is the best part about that movie.
She is, yes, 100%. She is the best part of that movie. Everything else is extremely mediocre, just like you would expect from all the other X-Men movies in that universe. So it's one of those things, right, where, like, when they inevitably reboot it for the MCU and they bring mutants into the MCU and they do something new with it, there are some, like, casting choices that you wish they would just, like, oh, let's pull those people over. Like, I would not at all mind if Wolverine was Hugh Jackman again. That'd be fantastic. I would not mind if Sophie Turner got cast as Jean Grey again. She's a really good fit for the role. So this movie, because of how mediocre the rest of it was, it made me extremely excited for the X-Men to have a fresh start in the MCU. And I think that was my overriding feeling walking away from it. It wasn't a bad movie. It was just so mediocre, which is kind of what all of the X-Men movies feel like these days.
Yeah, it is. And it hurts me because of how impressive they were in 2000 whenever we saw the very first X-Men. That was just such a breath of fresh air that now when there's an X-Men movie, it's a sigh where it's like, ugh, again, awesome, that. And it's like, I didn't even bother seeing Dark Phoenix in the theater because I couldn't bring myself to spend that money and time on it. And it's kind of the reason I haven't seen it since. I'm sure it'll show up on a streaming service one day and I'll watch it, but I don't care enough to do it, even though I love Sophie Turner and want to see her in that role.
Yeah, that sounds about right. The other thing that I did this week was Pokemon Masters, which is the new Pokemon game on mobile. And it's kind of interesting. I mean, it's a lot more about Pokemon trainers than about the Pokemon themselves. and they have these sync pairs. So it's like one trainer and one Pokemon. The Pokemon never goes into the ball. They just kind of like are together as a pair. And that's how things work in the region that you're in, because they always do something different for every region, for every Pokemon game. And the battling is similar to mainline games with like moves that you would recognize, but it's also kind of weird because the battles aren't real time and there's an energy bar and you have to wait for it to charge up. And then you can like select one of the 3 sync pairs that you have out at any one time. So you kind of always have a trainer and a Pokemon out, but there's 3 of them in your party and they're all active all at the same time. You just flip between them and like pick moves in real time. So it's closer to core Pokemon than any other mobile game has been, but there's something that it just loses when it's not about collecting and leveling up Pokemon. Like that is what the core of the series has always been. And if there was ever a doubt in my mind that it should stick to that at its core, this game has gotten rid of that doubt, because it just does not feel the same when you can't go around collecting and leveling up Pokemon.
That's one of the reasons I haven't downloaded this, that it came out and it didn't look interesting from a Pokemon perspective to me. That it didn't do what I like the most about Pokemon, which is honestly collecting them and having that sense of discovery. And the trainers have traditionally been the least interesting part about any Pokemon game.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you are a Pokemon super fan and you love the Pokemon trainers in the anime and the games and all of the gym leaders from all of the different games and all the different regions, and like if you geek out about that, you would probably love this game. I'm just not that person, right? I like Pokemon. I like the monsters themselves. I like leveling them up and then defeating the Fantastic Four? Final Four. That's the word I was looking for. And then finishing the game. Like, that's what I want, right? This game made me realize how much I appreciate that core Pokemon formula. And if anything, it got me more excited for Pokemon Sword and Shield that's coming out in a couple months here.
I want to get excited about that one again, and I think a lot of the backlash that the fandom has had on Twitter and other social media has really put a bad taste in my mouth, because I totally disagree with all the stuff that they were complaining about in general, and it's one where I'm just so tired of seeing it that I haven't been looking forward to Sword and Shield, but I know when I get Sword and Shield, I'm going to be all in. Like, when it comes out, I'm going to be, there day one and loving it, but I'm having a hard time psyching myself up for it because of all the negativity that's been around it. I'm just so tired of seeing that.
I guess I haven't seen any of that, but I also don't do social media nearly as much anymore, so I don't get a whole lot of negativity day to day in my life, which is probably a really good thing.
Yeah, probably so. Yeah, it's I've seen a lot of negativity around the way that they've done choices that they've made for Pokemon Sword Shield. So it's I think it's going to be a great game. I just want to get excited for it. I just kind of burned out on Pokemon Talk right now because of online. I shouldn't even say Pokemon Talk. It's just I can't wait to play it and talk about it with people who also really like it.
Yeah, I'm excited for that too. I mean, the best part about Pokemon Masters was my son and my daughter downloaded it right away too. So the 3 of us, for like a couple days in there, all of us were playing it. And so we were all talking about it together. And it was like, oh, show me what you're doing. What level are your guys? What trainers do you have out right now with which Pokemon? That was the best part by far. And now all 3 of us have kind of fallen off of it. Like, all of us still have it installed, but we're not really actively playing. So I think the game is like slowing down for all of us. I don't think I'm going to play much more of it unless my kids really, really get into it, but it doesn't seem like they're latching on that strongly. But I am glad that I got a couple days of that with them, because that's always super fun.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine that, not having kids. Like, I do it with Riley, with my nephew, whenever we're into the same game together like that. We've played phone games that he's had on like his iPad, all mobile games that he's had on his iPad, I've had on my phone, stuff like that together. So I get that, but having it regularly with your kids, just being able to have that kind of flash in the pan, fun, and then move on would be cool.
Yeah, it was super cool to do that little bit with them. So anytime I can get away with just playing a game with them that they're into and I'm into, I always try to take advantage of that. That's probably it for this week. You guys can write to us with comments, suggestions, or feedback. Our email address is geek2geekcast@gmail.com, or reach us on Twitter @geek2geekcast. Those are both really good places to send questions if you have questions for the question episode. We also have longer discussion threads on the subreddit at reddit.com/r/geek2geekcast.
We also have great discussions on Slack and Discord. You can go to geek2geekmedia.com for invite links, and you can hang out with us. And while you're there, check out all the other content on the network.
I blog at agreenmushroom.com, and you can find me at grnmushroom. That's green mushroom without the E's on Twitter.
And I'm on Twitter as at Professor Beej. That's Beej with 2 E's, and you can listen to me even more on the Dragon Quest FM podcast.
We've been Void and Beej with your Geek to Geek podcast. That'll do it for this week. See you next week, geeks.
Bye!
Hey geeks, this is Capsule J. I'm a streamer on the Geek to Geek Media Network. If you like discovering new games and chatting with cool nerdy folks, be sure to check out my channel on Twitch. You can find it at twitch.tv/CapsuleJ. That's CapsuleJay. I stream a blend of indies, retro games, and RPGs most Tuesday nights from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern, and occasionally on Thursdays and weekends. Hope to see you then.
Hi, my name is Joe Hogan, and I'm a geek. And if you're currently listening to this, there's a good chance you're a geek too. So check out my podcast, Geektitude. Each week, I talk with somebody about their geek aptitude. Sometimes I talk to people in a geeky profession. Sometimes it's someone doing something really cool with their geekiness. Often it's another geeky podcaster. But it's always someone who wants to share their inner geek. So join me each week as we come together to geek out about all the geeky stuff we love. And remember, this week, keep it geek.
Hello friends, this is Troidal Power inviting you to join me over on Twitch most weeknights, sometime after dinner. Video games have always been a social hobby for me, with friends and family crammed together on a couch chatting away while someone holds the controller. And thanks to the power of the internet, I've got my own virtual couch over on Twitch where you can kick back and goof off while I play games. Find me on Twitch by searching Troidal Power, that's TROYTLE Power, to snag a spot on the couch.
Hello, I'm Katie.
And I'm Chelsea.
And together we are Tea Time with Katie and Chelsea, a podcast all about pop culture.
We talk about books, movies, music, basically anything we want at this point. Yes, we obsess about K-pop.
And Keanu Reeves.
And sometimes Katie cries on the podcast.
Hey, that's rude.
But really, we are just here to talk about all the things that we love, so make sure to head over to teatimewithkc.com and geek2geekmedia.com to check us out. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to our show wherever you download your podcasts.
Bye!